Spagnola, the Director of Student Services, and behalf of our special education Brighton PTSA and our joint PTSAs between BHS and TCMS, welcome. I know that after a few, Rachel, you can correct me on this one too, Jackie, jump in as well. I know after a couple months ago, the special education meeting with the principal, this was a highly requested conversation. So thanks to all of you behind the scenes who were able to put this together to talk about the transition from TCMS to BHS, whether your student has an IEP or a 504 plan. Hi, Tiffany, how are you? You can say hello. I'm gonna scoot off. I'm gonna be bebopping myself. Good to see so many people. You are all in great hands.
I apologize that I'm late, guys. I was just hopping off of a work call. Did we do introductions or where's Rachel? Rachel, you are right next to me in Zoom. So I actually can't stay for the whole meeting, but I'm excited because Rachel has supported SPED since I've been in this role and probably prior to that. So I'm excited. I just want to give you a little bit of a background for those that do not know her. So Rachel Rosner is the Director of Education and Support at Autism Up. This is her 9th year at Autism Up, having started out as a volunteer coordinator. Prior to her work at Autism Up, Rachel worked at the JCC for 18 years in several capacities, the director of JCC's Child Care Center, school age programs, and summer day camp. Rachel supervises our family navigation programs, conducts trainings and workshops in the community, and partners with the local organizations to provide support and opportunities to our families. She has 2 children who are products of the Brighton School District. Her son is 23 now, and her daughter is a graduating senior. As the parents of 2 autistic children, supporting and educating families and the community is the perfect intersection for Rachel's professional expertise and professional passion. So, I'm not going to say any more, Rachel. You can take it away.
That makes me sound so good.
You are good, girl.
I've only been around Brighton for about 20 years in the district, whatever. Me and Dr. Hall hanging out at French Road School, well, you know. You're almost rid of me as a parent anyway. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Why doesn't it look like it's working?
And I want to thank you in advance, and I have to hop off. So thank you, and then I will
Tiffany?
share on our Facebook.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Bye, Tiffany.
It doesn't seem to like me. Why is it doing that? Share. Open system preferences. What the heck does that mean? Uh-oh.
While you're doing that, I'm just going to quickly introduce Jim Nunez, the middle school principal. He's on the Zoom here this afternoon as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Hall, for that introduction. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
And we have Jackie Liebman, who's a PTSA chair for the high school. And Jim, I don't know if you have any middle school PTSA chairs on.
Scanning through.
That's okay.
Kind of hard to tell at this point, yeah. But it doesn't seem so.
Really great to see. We at least have 18 non-school people that are on the Zoom, so this is great. And I do recognize many of the names here. So.
It looks like it's supposed to work.
Do you want me to make you if I made you the host, maybe?
Security and privacy settings. Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, Tom, if you give permission to share your screen, then that should enable Rachel to.
Well, I made her a co-host, which she should be able to, but I'm going to make you a host right now.
Something's happening.
I just made you the host.
Something's happening with my Zoom permissions or something. Let's see. Oh, it looks so much better now. Hold on. Don't really want to be.
There you go.
But
we can see it.
Yay. Okay. Good. You can all see this now? Awesome. I will not be able to see you, except for the few people who are on my screen as we're going through this. And we only have less than an hour, so I'm going to zip right along, but please, please, please interrupt me, because I won't be able to see you raising your hand. Just unmute yourself and butt in. I'm totally fine with that. I do know that there will be things in this presentation that are not relevant to everybody, so just bear with me, because I'm hoping that everybody will get at least one thing out of it. So when we talk about transition to adulthood, transition out of school, that means different things to every person, to every family, to every individual, depending on what their needs are. And so I'm going to do my best to try to cover the basics that might apply to the most folks that are here. So sorry about the lawnmower there, if you can hear it. Clearly, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. You have to make a plan. So you might have heard the saying before, you know, make the plan. You know, you have a plan, but you got to work the plan. You got to kind of go back and start at the beginning, you know, once you have your end result in mind. So these are all the things that we are not going to talk about today. Because each one of them is at least an hour on its own. But I wanted to put them up on the screen so that you would see what the different things are, to see if they might be relevant for you, so that you can just kind of put an asterisk there for you to look into later. Guardianship and alternatives to guardianship, depending on your child, person-centered planning, transitioning to adult health care, the different kind of diploma options that exist, which is definitely relevant to everybody on this screen. And at the rate things are going, they change every 6 months. So, you know, what are the different kinds of further education options that will work for your child? Housing, teaching them self-advocacy skills, financial planning, eligibility and services through Access VR, and really important, but yet again, a whole nother workshop, disclosure. When and how should a person disclose their disability, what their rights are, all that kind of stuff. So all topics that need to be thought about, but not today. This is another just screen, and I sent these, I sent a copy of the PowerPoint and some handouts to Dan Goldman a couple of weeks ago, and I will make sure that everybody that was on here gets a copy of those if you haven't already. I don't want to spend too much time here, and again, not all of these documents will be relevant to each person, but things to think about making sure you have in place and putting in a safe place in case you need it. So there is a timeline that you should think about as parents. There's actually a timeline in terms of requirements for school, for what services are provided, starting at what age. But there are also things that can and should be done at home at certain ages. So for example, if you're thinking that your child might need, you want to explore the possibility of guardianship, you shouldn't wait until after your child is 18 to do that. Attached in the handouts that I will make sure you get is a timeline for families to start thinking about, you know, that has all the different things on the list, and you just take out of it what's relevant for you. So, ooh, that's terrible resolution on the screen. Sorry about that. So I wanted just to make sure that everybody understands, as you transition out of high school, about IDEA, Section 504, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, how they work together to help you with that transition out of school and into adulthood. Those things, those laws are like that rebar that goes in underneath a street or under the, you know, foundation of a house before you pour the concrete over it. So in terms of transition, so the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act was passed in 2004, updated in 2004. It's not that old. For those of us with high school age kids, You might remember that we didn't have any kids with disabilities in our schools when we were going to school. But as far as transition goes, one of the important things that IDEA covers is preparing students for employment and independent living, which seems contrary to what school is supposed to be about, right? But for students with disabilities, this is a really important step to help them. It's legally required to help them take those next steps in life. And there's a bunch of stuff that you can find in the regulations about what transition services are and how they work. So they're results oriented, just like a regular goal in your IEP would be. Obviously supportive of the student and what they need to help them facilitate that transition out of school to whatever their next step in life is. Student-centered, not family-centered or institution-centered. And it's comprehensive. The transition section of the IEP takes into account things that are not academic in nature, daily living skills, functional vocational evaluations, that kind of thing. So I know that not everybody on this call has a child who has an IEP, but we're gonna go through this real quick. So in the IEP, there is a transition section, 2 sections actually, which do not live next to each other. So it's very annoying, actually. So it's an outcome-oriented plan based on your child's strengths, areas of interest, and accommodations. The plan is monitored and revised as your child gets older. Just like every year you go back and meet with your team and plan for next year's IEP. The transition plan gets updated as a part of that. A team approach, the plan cannot be changed or modified without your knowledge and consent. Involvement of the student is required. It's not optional at that point. Services that help address skills and accommodations need to prepare for transitioning post-high school, and a summary of services and skills acquired during the transition process. So that's all the legal gobbledygook. So here's where it gets interesting. Section 504 of the Civil Rights Law of the Americans with Disabilities Act starts to kind of work together. So Section 504 and the ADA make sure that the child will not be discriminated against in school and beyond school, that equal opportunities are available to students with disabilities, that there's effective access to support services, protections post-high school, make sure that all of those extracurricular kind of activities that might be a heavy part of the transition plan are accessible. And then when you get to the adult world, it provides those protections for people with disabilities in their education and employment. So it's actually a part of the law, even though it's obvious that your child is the most important member of the team. It's a legal requirement. Once you hit transition age, so 9th grade, basically, technically it's age 15, but it's 9th grade. It's a legal requirement that they attend all meetings and are an integral part of the planning process. This resource is the best thing ever. It's not from New York State. I think it's Virginia, but I could be wrong off the top of my head. I wanted to put it out there for you. It's imdetermined.org. Fabulous, fabulous resources for schools and educators, for parents, and for our kids with disabilities to help kind of facilitate that transition process, thinking about those more outside of school oriented goals. They have some amazing, amazing tools on there to help everybody kind of stay focused and to help facilitate the conversation that includes your child in the process in a really accessible way. It's really terrific. And everything is free for the taking. So a perfect IEP that has the transition activities, the transition sections are filled out because your child is in high school. There's no such thing as a perfect IEP. It just can't happen because we're all humans. But a perfect IEP rolls up and down and everything works together within the IEP. So you start with your measurable annual goals that we're all used to putting in place for our kids. You build on those annual goals to create your measurable post-secondary goals. Your post-secondary goals can be something like goes to college or lives in their own apartment, or whatever those post-secondary goals are. The idea is that your annual goals that are in the regular part of the IEP help to support those. And then once you have those post-secondary goals, you can develop that coordinated set of transition activities. So the activities that are going to be put in place, the programs, the services that help your child to be able to achieve their post-secondary goals. And then clearly the opposite is true, but we want everything to kind of roll up and roll down. In a perfect world, they should all be supporting each other. Anybody have any questions so far? I know I'm going fast, but we have a lot to do. Anybody? Okay. So here is, I hope you can see this, the part of the IEP. This is a blank template version that has those measurable post-secondary goals. So you'll see that there are 3 categories of post-secondary goals, and it's not just about education. There's education and training goals, there's employment goals, and independent living goals. The weird part is that the school will never know if your student actually achieves their post-secondary goals, because by the time they do that, they're out of school. So it's a little bit of a different way of thinking about it. When we think about the regular old goals that go in your IEP, your student is supposed to achieve each of those goals within the school year, which is why they change every year. You build on them. So these are a little bit more lofty, I guess, but they do need to be concrete and measurable so that there is something to work towards. So it could be any number of different things. So I just gave you some examples. For post-secondary education and training, it could be student will participate in the auto body program at the community college. It could be that they're going to a 4-year university. It could be that they're participating in apprenticeship or on-the-job training. Any number of things could be under there as long as they're specific and measurable. Theoretically, the post-secondary education and training rolls right up to the career and employment piece, right? So that if they want to be a registered nurse, they're not going to enroll in the auto body program at MCC. That doesn't make any sense. So whatever their career and employment goals are, the post-secondary education goals should support that. And then there's also the independent living skills. So this is things like student will live in the dormitory at MCC and budget their money independently, although that's 2 different goals. Student will live in their own apartment and use public transportation independently. Student will live in their own residence with assisted living support and cooking and money skills. So obviously these things will change as the person gets older, and what their answers are in 9th grade is not going to be the same as their answers in 12th grade or post high school. So, but all 3 of these things should kind of work together. And then once you have those goals in place, that's what's going to inform the coordinated set of transition activities. Everybody with me? Questions about this? See a couple chat things. Hang on.
Question as well, Rachel.
So, okay. So who do you work with while still in high school on the IEP? So the school team helps create this. And then when your child is old enough to potentially take advantage of something like Access VR, then the school actually has access to one counselor who handles all of the BHS kids. That's the same for every school district. And I'm sorry, whoever it was that misunderstood sort of what this is about, but this is stuff that in terms of going from TCMS to BHS. But if your child has an IEP, this is really good information to know, because next year, this coordinated set of transition activities will be an important part of the IEP. Who else had a question?
I did, Rachel. So how would like day programs or supported employment be factored in with this?
So yeah. So that would go back to education and training, employment, independent living skills. They would document that. Like if that's the goal, is day program placement.
Okay.
You know, depending on the program and depending on the skills that they, you know, will need to be working on in there. You know, each day program has its own sort of personality, you know. So not every day program is the right fit for every person. Some are day habs without walls. There's one in town with a real arts focus. Of course, there's no guarantee to get into any of those, which is a whole nother issue. But those same kinds of goals can be put in place. And these concrete goals may not be achievable until the age of 30 or you know, whenever they achieve them, and that's okay. It's just, you know, setting the stage to have those things in place and ready, and have the student ready when they get there. So that's where all of these transition activities can come in. So this is where it gets wonky, where people are really unfamiliar. So I'm going to skip over these quality indicators, but just want to show you really quickly. You've got instruction things, related services, community experiences. So that could be like job exploration kind of stuff. I don't really know what I want to do with my life, but I like dogs. So maybe they go visit a vet's office or something like that. So each of these services and activities that support those goals can be put in place. We're going to skip over these. This is just a really important thought, I think, that we could probably talk about for quite some time. We are zipping through this, which is good, so we can talk. Somebody asked about a 504. A 504 also can be in place after high school. All of those things that are listed on the 504 plan, as far as accommodations and modifications, can be and should be kept in place as much as possible when they move on to college and employment. So I think in some sense, kiddos with a 504 plan, when they exit, might be actually in a little bit of better shape in some ways, because you literally have a concrete list of the things that work for your student that will work for them in college or in the workplace. Technically, that's what the exit summary should show when you exit out of special education services, when your child either graduates or exit at 21. But it's really, you know, using that list and keeping, you know, continuing to tweak those accommodations and modifications with an eye on whatever their next steps will be. So with an eye on college, with an eye on a vocational training program, and you know, having a working list of those things so that they can give it to a boss or a teacher or a trainer or someone who's working with them in their apprenticeship program or whatever they're doing. That's going to be incredibly helpful for them in terms of what's on your screen now. helping them with those self-advocacy skills, with knowing how and when to disclose what's going on with them, and whether it's relevant or not, and for helping them to become more autonomous. I think we talk so much about wanting our kids to be independent, but when you think about it, independence isn't really what we want. Nobody is really independent. For certain things, of course, but we don't want to just be independent. That means you're all by yourself. That means you don't need anyone for any help ever. And we know that's just not true for any person, not just people with disabilities. So what we really want to help our kids get to is to learn some autonomy, the ability to make your own decisions and choices, so we can support them in their decisions and choices and help them put into place the supports that they need in order to get there. So I think that's an important distinction, and something really important for any kid, especially a child with a disability, learning issues, anything like that, to help them understand that this isn't about throwing them to the wolves. Like, they're not just going to get, tossed out of the car while it's going 30 miles an hour, to be left to their own devices. That it's not about, poof, school is over, high school's done, you're out of here. It's about gaining the skills that they need in order to be successful in whatever they want to do. So building those skills and helping to create that kind of circle of support around them is really, I think, very important. So the best way to predict the future is to create it. And so I know this is a lot to take in and a lot to think about, but I wanted to make sure, see, we're halfway through it. Totally. Now we can have the conversation. Yay. Do colleges have to honor the 504 that has always been in place? So yes and no. Yes, of course they do. And they're not going to reinvent the wheel. If your child goes to college and goes to the disability services office and says, hey, here's my 504 from high school, they're not going to say, nope, we're not doing that. Nope, no way. Of course they're going to. But the burden is on the student to make sure that those things happen, to make sure that they go to the disability services office, to make sure that they make those connections and keep them. And the burden is really much more on the student than it is on the, on the student versus their professors. And some schools, some individual professors are better at it than others, more willing and open than others. So that's where that sort of self-advocacy comes in. So an IEP in college, there is no such thing. Sorry, Charlie. There is no such thing. I'm experiencing this in my own personal life with my daughter graduating from high school this year. She has had a pretty hefty IEP since kindergarten. So the thought of how do we figure this out? And she needs some pretty intense supports in order to be successful and get that diploma, which is inches away. So what's that going to look like in college? I don't know yet. It's a little too early to contact the disability services office, but they're not going to talk to me. I'm not enrolled. This is grown-up time. So they're only going to talk to her. They're not going to talk to your mother. You're an adult and you're in college now. So it's a huge transition to make as a family member. For a student, and especially in Brighton, and believe me, I have worked with families from all districts in the area, and Brighton is especially good at involving families as a part of the team and making sure that your voice is heard as a part of what's going on and the decisions that are being made. And so to have been so spoiled, honestly, throughout your child's academic life, to then have to go to, see ya, I'm not talking to you. You're not enrolled. Your child is a legal adult. You know, it's disconcerting and complicated. So you're going to have to rely, I'm going to have to rely on my child who doesn't like to say one word to anyone ever to somehow go to the disability services office on her own and make an appointment and talk about the things that are complicated for her and the support that she needs for learning. Holy hell, that's not going to be fun, and probably not going to go well. So that's like the next thing on the horizon that we're thinking about. But knowing that that's out there, thinking about developing those skills for your child right now, not when they're 17, not when, I mean, I'm trying and have been trying. And she is who she is, right? You're not going to change that. But for those of you who are on here who have students at TCMS, start doing it right now. Start working with your kids to advocate for their own needs, to be able to talk about their learning needs or their disability, and what that means for them academically and otherwise. Doing, you know, creating that, teaching them those self-advocacy skills is, you know, at the point where we are in my house, it's 99% of it. To be able to go to the college, you know, Office of Disability Services, to be able to understand what's going on and what kind of help you need, to know what questions to ask. Obviously, as parents, we're going to help them to get there, but I can't go to that meeting at the Office of Disability Services at MCC. She's got to go. So doing that prep work now, helping your 8th graders, 9th graders, 10th graders to learn those advocacy skills, starting right now. You know, did you email your teacher if you have a problem? You know, boy, are we all seeing that with virtual learning, right? This isn't working for me. I need my teacher. I don't see the link. Well, I can't help you. You're teaching those kinds of self-advocacy skills is going to be the thing that makes the difference in their ability to be successful post-high school. The less they need to rely on other adults, teachers, or parents to do it for them, the better off they're going to be. I feel like I'm giving myself a lecture right now, which I am, because, you know, it's going to be interesting. But yeah, that, you know, it's the colleges are, of course, required to follow the Americans with Disabilities Act. And in this particular case, it's the, you know, Section 504 of the law. Some schools do a great job of it and have a ton of different things available. I know that was that last month that some colleges came and talked about different, the way different disability offices work. Deanna, you're shaking your head. And if you attended last month, I'm sure you saw that MCC is different than NAS, and, you know, some have more, some have less, some have different. You know, RIT is different than the other two. And so that, I think, should be a part of your college search, if college is what's on the horizon for your kiddo, to make sure that their needs are going to be met wherever they decide to go. Keep hitting me with questions or things you want to talk about. Like I said before, I know that everything that's in here isn't going to be relevant for every student, because everybody has such a different, you know, there are people on this call that I know that are sending their kids to a day program, and or maybe have a student that will never live independently, will be at home with mom and dad. Maybe there are, you know, there are people on this call who are sending their kids out of state to go to college next year. So there's just a huge variety of needs and concerns. And I think that the more you can think about it from a real practical perspective, what skills does my child need to make it out there in the universe without me? Because no matter how much we would like to think that it'll be fine and my kid's going to live with me forever, they're not, because you're not going to be around forever.
Rachel,
So,
there's a question in the chat.
oh, okay.
I'll read it. Any thoughts on how to weed through the schools to identify those that provide better supports?
That's tough. You know, there are a few colleges in the country that are known for their disability supports. There are a few colleges in the country that do really well, that have specific, for example, autism disability service offices and programs. Morgan University, is that right? In West Virginia? I don't know why I'm asking you guys, I don't know. But there are a few. RIT has a spectrum support services office. You know, most don't have something as specific as that. But I think, you know, making that a part of your search for what works for your child is really, really important. You know, doing your research that includes more than just talking to the college, right? Seeing if you can get connected with other parents who might have sent their students there, and to see what that really means. So at RIT, for example, the Office of Disability Services is open for anyone. But the Spectrum Support Program costs extra money. So all of those, and it's really great, but you need to factor in all of those different things. And usually I would say that a quick Google search will get you, but it may not in this situation.
Yeah, this is in large part what the last month's meeting was about, but I can tell you from personal experience, there's not a centralized place to look. You have to kind of look at, it plays into how the school talks about fit, Brighton High School. And part of that fit is thinking about what your child who might need extra supports, what they need. And look not just at disability services, but also at just what the school offers. You know, some students will do better in small classes. Some prefer the anonymity of large classes. Some schools have orientation programs that are extra, like you can come early and do like a small group activity before orientation starts. That might help some kids.
Yep. And really look into it. Just from personal experience, just this last couple of weeks ago, I got a letter from MCC that says, hey, we think your child would be a good fit for the educational opportunity program at MCC. And I'm reading about it and it looks amazing. It's, you know, extra supports and services. And there's a 1-month summer sort of transition to college thing. So I'm so excited. And I call and you have to income qualify. Whoops, they should have mentioned that. But all those kinds of, really ask the questions about those things, because they might seem wonderful, but you might not qualify. They might seem wonderful and it might be price prohibitive for you. Is there a perfect place for every person? Maybe. But it's, starting to think about this kind of stuff is important to try to kind of narrow in. So you're narrowing in on all these other learning needs, right? Plus, does the college have the program that my child wants? Is it affordable? What kind of scholarships have they got? It's really complicated. And this just adds an extra layer of not fun stuff to look into. But what I'm supposed to be talking about is that 9th grade through 12th grade stuff, and how your IEP starts to change, how kind of where your head is as a parent of a student that has extra learning needs should be, and how to think about those things a little bit differently. If your child has a 504 plan, that means that they don't need some of these extra supports, which is great. If your child has an IEP, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Rachel. I thought that you were pausing. I apologize.
No, go.
There are a couple questions in the chat.
Okay.
I will assist Rita. There is one related to transitioning to freshman class. And then Danielle and Sarah, I know that there's one there too, also about day programs. So I'm going to go to the one about the freshman class, and then I'll get to Danielle and Sarah's, because I know, Rachel, you just started dipping into the transition. Danielle, I'm not going to forget your question. So, but the question here is, are there any issues, concerns about required testing to get into foundational freshman class English math? Maybe that, I apologize. Maybe the question Cynthia, maybe you were asking about transition to college, and I was
Mhm.
interpreting that as freshman year of high school, excuse me.
Yeah, you know, each school does it differently. I was actually looking, so MCC has something called the AccuPlacer, where it's a test, I guess, to see whether your child has those foundational skills at the level that they're going to need them. And then they will place you can either place out, right, of that foundational English class, or maybe they'll find that you just need to take that 101 class that everybody takes, or you need to take a foundational class before that. And so MCC in particular uses the AccuPlacer. It's on my list of things to do this week. Cynthia, too. Maybe we can hold hands and do it together, Cynthia, to figure all this out.
And then Danielle's question was, is there a list of, it was similar to the list question, is there a list of different day programs in the area along with staff ratios? And Sarah Silvio also was saying she was interested in that as well.
Oh, Danielle, who do you think you are? Come on. So, ha ha ha. I actually just this week put my hands on the list of community pre-vocational programs, but that list was not put together by OPWDG, of course. So they don't want to tell you that stuff. They don't want to make it easier for you and say, here's the 20 programs in the area and here's what makes them special. You have to do that all by yourself. But because of some things that are going on work-wise, I think I might be able to get an unofficial list. Maybe. Yeah. What else you got? I think thinking really creatively in terms of if we're talking about IEPs for a minute again, in terms of the coordinated set of transition activities, you don't know what you don't know. What can I even do? I don't know. This is not what you've been, not how like things have been going. If you have an IEP from kindergarten, right? When you get to the coordinated set of transition activities, what does that even mean? What are my options? So, and like on the one hand, how do I even know what to ask if I don't know what's available? On the other hand, what's available may not be the right thing. So, you can get, I'm just going to toss some random things out there. You get mobility training, which is more often than not in those 18 to 21 programs, because mobility training is not about how you use your arms and legs. Mobility training is more like transportation training. Like, how can you navigate in the universe to get yourself from place to place? When Leah had a mobility training assessment when she was a freshman, because we didn't want to, she is a little out there sometimes. And we didn't honestly know if she could cross the street by herself at 12 Corners safely. So, for those open class periods. So she had a mobility assessment and it's fine. And she was fine. And we probably didn't need to do it anyway. But just depending on what your needs are, there are things out there. If your child is 100,000% certain that they want to be a vet, by the way, I have learned that every kid wants to be a vet, or they think they want to be a vet. But when they find out what a vet actually does, they don't want to be a vet. So, digging into that a little bit deeper, that's the hard part. The easy part is sticking it on a piece of paper and saying, Leah wants to be a vet in 9th grade. And then next year changing it that she wants to be a fashion designer or whatever. That's the easy part. That just checks off the list. But making sure that goal is actually meaningful and what goes behind it. Leah wants to be a vet. She does not want to be a vet. But if she did, then you start thinking about what are those transition activities that she could take part in that might help her gain those skills. BOCES has an animal care program, so maybe she wants to enroll in that. Maybe she can go do some visits and job shadowing at a veterinarian's office. And so those kinds of things can be put in as a transition activity. If they don't know really what they would like to do, then maybe you do those job shadowing experiences at 3 completely different places instead of 3 different veterinarians' offices. It can be, I'm trying to think of some things that might happen, that typically happen post-high school in those post-high school programs, learning how to take public transportation or independent transportation. Learning how to do, any of those sorts of, what are you going to do if you're sending your child to college out of state? What do they need to be able to do in their lives to be able to live in a dorm away from mom and dad? Do they know how to do their laundry yet? Do they, some of these things are clearly for home and not for school, but how can the school support those goals in the way that in the way that they could and should be? So those transition activities look different for everybody.
There's another question in the chat, and then I'm thinking maybe we've got a few minutes left of our time together, and then we can maybe come back to see if there's any other questions specific to the transition from middle school to high school. The question in the chat is, do you happen to know if FLCC is comparable to when referencing previously in the conversation MCC, if that makes sense?
They are, and I know several folks who go to FLCC, and they do a fabulous job at FLCC. Fabulous. I've never heard anything bad about anyone I know who sent their kiddo there. So FLCC also has a great reputation.
So are there anyone else want to either unmute themselves or pop some questions into the chat related to the transition from TCMS to the high school, specifically regarding 504s or IEPs? These are all have been fabulous questions, because we do start talking about transition as soon as youngsters pop over into freshman year. So that's and prior to that. So this is, we always keep the end in mind. So there's no bad question right now, but anything specific to that 8th grade to 9th grade switch? And then there's another comment in the chat. I'll read out. It's not necessarily a question, but it is a great suggestion from Sharon. Just before I log off, she says she wanted to suggest to everyone here to remember to advocate for their kids' placements in a program that supports their cultural or religious identity and allergies. Example, a cooking class and a day transitioning program that offers more than pork or bacon cooking options. And it's cutting off, which may be a challenge based on your religious affiliation or vegetarian parents. It's an excellent point to think about. Mm-hmm. Or a question to ask in those transition meetings.
Yeah, for day programs, it's a slightly different conversation, right? In terms of those kinds of things, and what would the alternatives be if you keep kosher or halal or whatever the case may, or allergy wise. But those are conversations you have to have with your kid if they're going away to, if they're going to school, if they're going to college, and they're going to be on campus and they're going to be eating on campus. What does that look like? And how to, all goes back to that self-advocacy thing in terms of allergies and knowing how to make those decisions on their own behalf, so that they literally don't make themselves sick in those situations. So yeah, it's really complex, and I bet everyone's going to leave here super terrified. It's going to be great. Terrifying myself.
Well, back to what I said in the beginning, there's a circle of support around here so that people are seeing names and faces who will be going through the same thing.
Yep. And I promise you that I will get you the handouts. Well, I won't get them to you, but they will get to you. And on there is a list of all the slides that have all the stuff that we just kind of breezed over. you know, in terms of the things that we didn't talk about at this meeting that may or may not be relevant to you, or just kind of delving into in a little bit of more detail. If you're a crazy person like me, when you're preparing for your IEP meeting, you know, going through and really digging in to make sure that everything is all matched up and connected, right, between the goals and the activities and all those kinds of things. It's very weird that I won't be doing it anymore for my own kid. I'm done. We should have popped champagne, except for it was on Zoom. So, coffee, there you go. Exactly. Good toast. But if there's anything that you didn't feel comfortable talking Beth, that you didn't feel comfortable talking about in public, or that was on the list of things that we didn't cover today, what I didn't do is put up my email. So I'm going to give it to you all right now. This is literally what I do for a living. So not to say that you shouldn't call the school or Deanna's office or whatever, but if there are things that are sort of outside the realm of school that you wanted to talk about, this is literally my job. So you can email me at rrosner, so RROSNER.
I'll put it in the chat too, Rachel.
At autismup.org. Cynthia, you don't think I know you're Michael's mom? So I'm happy to
the last
talk
name
offline.
thing.
Yeah. Hi, Alex. Tell your wonderful wife I said hello. So yeah, I'm happy to, you know, chat offline about anything. That's why I get paid so handsomely at work, right? Working for a little nonprofit. But this is what I do and what I love to do every day. So happy to talk offline with any of you about anything.
Rachel, it's Michelle. I actually have two comments. One is thank you so much. This was, and actually made me feel better because it's a rough transition and I thought it was just me. I didn't know where to go. And let me just say, for the people that are, you know, transitioning from middle school to high school, it is not too soon. You won't believe how fast, you know, it felt like I had so much time and we're here. And you do go from this process where you're guided through year after year to like, okay, what's next? And so it's just not too soon to just try slowly over the years to work your way through it. That's all I can say.
Yep. And encouraging your kids to take on, you know, just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. Even if that means standing over their shoulder, telling them what to write to their teacher via email. And then, you know, then checking with them to make sure that they've done it on their own. And, you know, how do you, and then maybe someday getting to the point where they just know to email their teacher for help without asking. Haha. But that's the goal. So, yeah, when they get out into the wild blue yonder, all bets are off. They don't have the wonderful supportive environment that they had at Brighton, but you know, that's the goal, right? Wherever they go and whatever they do is to recreate that circle, to find new people, to find a new and different team to help support them getting their needs met. So it's 12:58. This never happens. Never, ever happens. I usually can't stop talking.
Rachel, thank you very, very much. We appreciate your time today. And
Thanks,
I did put your email in there. And of course, your children's counselor, my office, and reaching out to Rachel or administration at either building, we are happy to help you in any way. Absolutely. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. And we'll hang
everybody.
Thank you.
Nice to see your faces.
Thank you.